A warm welcome to all. The heading of the talk this evening is Where is Fashionable and Where is it Hot to Live in London at the moment? And that I think is a topic that we at Withers have a very close interest in. I mean, I personally have been acting for clients on residential property in both London and elsewhere in the UK for upwards of 30 years. And we've built up a team here at Withers. We've got 5 partners and 9 assistants, all working on residential work. I mean, obviously together we're looking after all our clients' requirements in residential property, acquisitions, disposals, development, construction, a lot of tax and structuring advice, as you can imagine. I think the thing we're finding at the moment is that we're living in interesting times, and some might think far too interesting. And for everyone who's active in the residential property market, uncertainty has its impact. It creates problems for all of us, but for some it might create opportunities as well. And I don't want to preempt what our speakers are going to touch on this evening, but the sort of uncertainties we've all been battling with over the last 3 years, with Brexit in the wings, are probably well known and factored into the property market. But more recently, I think the concerns that have been raising their head are what might happen at a coming election. We've been keeping an eye on what the various parties have been saying, and we've had our clients coming to us and saying, well, is John McDonnell really calling for a tenant's right to buy from private landlords? Well, we don't know yet. I mean, it's been in a paper, so we'll wait and see, and wait and see what the various parties have in their election manifestos. We've seen proposals, albeit more general think tank proposals, about the introduction of a wealth tax. We've seen proposals for the removal of lifetime or tax on lifetime gifts. And some of our clients are thinking, well, the Bank of Mum and Dad, it's probably the 10th largest lender at the moment in the UK. If we're not going to be able to hand on money to our children so they can buy, what sort of impact is that going to have for first-time buyers? I think we can all worry about these things, we can speculate, we can try and factor them in. This evening we've got a very distinguished team to guide us through the central London property market and where we should be buying. I'm sure we're going to pay very close attention to the pearls they're going to cast before us. Alan Waxman. Alan is the founder and chief executive of Landmass, and Alan has been working in London for over 20 years on award-winning developments. Richard Gutteridge is is director and head of Savills Sloane Street office, someone whom we at Withers know very well, and Richard has an unrivaled knowledge of prime central London residential property, all too familiar with the needs of both the UK and the non-UK clients. And our chairman, Robert Evans. Robert is the founding partner of Property Wealth Management, a company dedicated to advising landlords and property investors, and in doing so providing perhaps a slight alternative to the traditional estate agent. It's not for me to stand up here and talk at you, it's for our panel to move forward. So without further ado, let me hand over to Robert.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Firstly, welcome, and thank you for coming this evening and rather studiously avoiding the front row. But I've been asking Alan for some breath mints on the basis of your seating arrangements. As Henry very kindly pointed out, I mean, really, we're here to engage in hopefully a lively debate and involve yourselves as well in that. So, you know, at the end, we're going to have some questions from you, and on the premise that you only get out of life what you put in, I hope you're going to ask us some questions or volunteer your own thoughts, which would be most welcome. In terms of you know, what we're going to discuss today, I'm just going to pose some questions to these guys and attempt to give some contribution myself. And I think the first one that I've got down here is who are the buyers today? And probably, Richard, if we can start with you. Can you hear us okay? Is it good?
Good evening, everybody. Who are the buyers today? The buyers today, if you're taking in different segments from the ultra-high net worth and the sort of higher net worth markets north of £5 million, to be very honest with you, it's actually incredibly difficult to pin down a consistent theme throughout. There are definitely trends out there at the moment. Our experience in London at the moment is that we're seeing when one door shuts, another one opens. We're seeing your normal European market. The Brits are still at 35% in terms of interest in UK property, upper end. In terms of the next one, we are swiftly moving into the US in terms of inquiry, and China rapidly follows. So it would probably be more weighted elsewhere, Indians, Russians. So, our market is far more evolving and changing nowadays than it has been for some time. And sometimes that's concerning, other times that's exciting. But our future ahead in the next couple of years with potentially the Chinese buyers, with the American buyers, is potentially going to open up a lot of doors. The other thing that I would say is property is a window and it's a multidisciplined asset. And a lot of these people are coming in firstly through the commercial wing, and then looking at business, and then looking at home afterwards. Then, of course, within those nationalities, you've got different ages and the different demographics of those ages and the demands that those chaps actually want. There's a very strong argument now that actually a lot of these chaps are buying slightly smaller properties than some of the huge properties they're used to. So we'll come on to that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, a very wide range. UK is still number one. We have an office, they've traded 25 properties and actually 19 have been Chinese. So, you don't hear that unless you hear it from the sort of sales numbers. But it's quite striking that things are changing.
And what do you what do you think is on that last statistic that you kindly shared? We all have a television and read the papers. Obviously, there's a lot of problems going on. Is this mainland China, or are these Hong Kong Chinese buyers that are coming in?
A little bit of both, actually, to be fair. I think if you have your money in Hong Kong, it's going to be slightly easier. But fundamentally, a lot of these people are buying their first entry, and I can see them then looking to invest further. So we're at the early stages. If you look across London, there have been 70,000 recorded units over the last year, from June 18 to June 19, across all London boroughs. And out of that huge number, 70% of those have been predominantly first-time buyers. And actually, these Chinese, they do buy small, they buy new homes. You've got 18,000 new home units coming to the market over the next 5 years. And that's a huge swathe of property that is right for these chaps, because they just want brand new, they want trust, they want an easy life. So the type of property we're going to offer is actually going to suit their requirements as well. So we're going to see more of it.
Okay. And Alan, in terms of the clients that you deal with and that you're involved with in London property, because I know you have an international sort of arm as well that deals with properties elsewhere, but specifically for London, where are you? Who are the buyers? In your view and your experience, what are you seeing on the street?
Good evening. So, as part of my research to prepare myself for this evening, I put a post on LinkedIn. Obvious thing to do. But what I did a little typo, and instead of putting HNW for high net worth, I put HMW. And I got a message saying, "Hi Alan, sorry, but what does HMW stand for? Love your recent post, by the way, utterly stunning projects." So I said, "Thanks for your kind comments and spotting my typo, HNW, high net worth." And he goes, "No problem, I did Google it, but the results were high maintenance woman. And I felt that was
Who are buying those then?
likely
Ask that
incorrect.
question.
And one of the things that Richard said, he talked about chaps. You know, don't forget the ladies who are high net worth individuals as well, because today you just never know, you know, who's going to walk through the door and who has the money. But coming back to Robert's point, I'm looking at it from a different point of view of people leaving somewhere because they have to and they need to find somewhere where they want to live, and other people who actually want to come specifically to London. If you look at a macro level, my personal view is the world is becoming a more dangerous place, but the world is also becoming a wealthier place. And whether you have Brexit, Corbyn, or whatever, London is and always will be, I believe, the international city of the world. Why? The Greenwich timeline. You know, we are in between New York Stock Exchange, Hong Kong, Shanghai, etc., Singapore, and that not alone, but that is a great stimulus for us having that attraction from a business point of view. We have the solid legal foundation. We've got one or two lawyers here this evening, and I'm sure a lot of your clients, you know, one of the reasons they want to be in London is because they feel secure. Nationalities, well, you know, you can speak to 10 different high net worths from different countries, and they'll all have different reasons for wanting to come here, and they'll all want to live in a different place. And the question is, you know, part of where Robert's coming from also is where do they want to live? And again, that's a cocktail of different answers. Nationalities, you know, we talked about the obvious things where people are wanting to leave Hong Kong perhaps because of what's going on there. We've got the drop in the value of the dollar. You know, a house in dollars 5 years ago might have cost, you know, a £5 million house 5 years ago would have cost $8 million. Today it costs 4.8, right? Mathematics are not difficult, right? So there's obviously certain attractions, certain different motivations, which then give people from different continents different desires, whether they need to come here, whether they want to come here, whether they have to come here, right? And so that the motivations are all different.
Right. I mean, I was interested, one of the things that we touched on is and I'm sure the lawyers will appreciate, the rule of law. I mean, certainly that's, you know, when I have a predominance towards old money Middle East families. I also have a number of UK family offices for British families as well. And they like the rule of law, but they do ask me about crime. And I haven't seen a policeman. I mean, around here you see lots of policemen, but you know, in the gritty streets of Knightsbridge, where I'm from, you never see a bobby. You know, you don't see anybody walking around, and that was certainly. So I get asked by my clients because they have friends who've been mugged in the street. I don't know how do you. Do you get asked about crime?
Yeah, you do. More so. And
Not
actually,
you personally,
I mean, crime numbers are now public information, so you can actually look on and see how much crime is going on. I mean, there's a story here that actually the super prime markets are very linked to the lower markets, because actually often it's the unhappiness that often ends up with the crime actually on the doorstep of the super prime owner. So
you're saying it's social.
Yeah, I would possibly say that. But, you know, I think people coming to this country, everything that happens is now immediately online. And, you know, whether it be in Leonard's Gardens this week or whether it be in anywhere else, there is crime going on, and the button's pushed and it's viral before you know. So, yeah, I think it is an issue. Hopefully some decisions will be made to sort it out.
Yeah, how do you... Your clients, is this something personally you think about, Alan, when you're looking at an investment?
I actually, for the first time, put a post on Facebook about people being mugged in South Aldi Street in Mayfair last week, and also in Grosvenor Gardens there was an incident. People are becoming more aware. You know, there's two sides to the argument. You know, if you go out wearing a flashy watch, are you looking for trouble, type of thing? You know, we all know that argument. Or should we all say that, well, because we're in a capital city, should be able to do what we want? You know, I'm spending quite a lot of time in Monaco, and there they have the highest level of numbers of police per capita, and people don't think twice about wearing a flashy watch or anything, right? But not everybody wants to live in Monaco. And crime will always be an issue, and I think some people, you know, maybe want to live in a gated project, like in the Boltons. They have a gated area where people like to live. Some gated muses. Obviously, some people feel safer in apartments because, especially if it's a concierge, 24-hour security, etc. It's very much, I think, horses for courses. Some people just think, wow, you know, compared to where I've left, this is heaven, right? And other people are a bit more sensitive, you know, and they may decide to leave one of the more maybe flashy areas like Knightsbridge and go down to more quieter Chelsea. You know, it's horses for courses.
I just say I think the demographics of these buyers actually are looking to buy in these new developments. That's exactly what they want. They're willing to pay the high service charges. You know, they don't have their own front door. They share a concierge, they've got a porter. It's exactly what they want. It's what they're buying into. I mean, out of 300 sales a year over 5 million, half of those are second homes. So that's exactly what they want. They want to lock it up and leave. So I think, I must say, I think your point, crime is really important.
Yes.
Well, it's not important, but it's an important issue that needs to be addressed, and I think that does change what people are looking to buy.
I think that's a good point. I was out with some clients the other day, and we mentioned beforehand, and this was a scenario of a property of £7.5 million property in a new build, where the service charge is, you know, 25,000 a year. And what you just said, you know, makes sense of what doesn't immediately make sense to me, you know. And I just think on the crime thing, it's interesting. I went to visit a client in Eaton Square, and they have their own little private people, don't they, with little bowler hats on and hello sir and how are you and all that sort of jazz, because it's a big space, Eaton Square, and behind two sets of gardens with a busy road down the middle, and the residents there have taken it on their own selves to have a private patrolling. Now, if you go to Hatton Garden, you gentlemen here will all have been buying your, you know, fiance's big engagements ring in Hatton. Hatton Garden has their own private security. You don't expect to see that in a street, you know, 5 minutes walk from Sloane Square underground station. But it's an interesting thing, and clients ask me about, you know, they come over for the summer and they ask me about crime, and I just am very interested to hear what you guys have to say about how it affects people's thinking, but not in Prime Central. I don't think they really think about it, and I wonder whether we have a duty of care to make sure things are in place to avoid something terrible happening at some point.
We one of the things that we do is we design for clients, right? And we offer a turnkey solution, which in itself is very nice. But in response to the crime, the other thing is obviously that Richard talked about is security, right? And security is super, super high. And what we're doing is we're actually joining up with three companies to actually help the security for the individual. One is specific art security, a company called Forteca, who are state of the art at what they do. They're the market leader. Another is IdeaWorks, who do in-house, in-home security, all the alarm systems, etc. And then another one is the German handmade safes called Stockinger, right? Because security is super important, and it's however important it was 10 years ago, it's obviously more important today. Where it is today, in another 10 years' time, it's going to be even more important. So catering now for that market and letting the high net worth clients know that we understand what their needs are, I think is very important for all of us, because everything that you do is actually wanting to give the impression to all your clients that you understand their needs, and that's why we cater well for the people that we advise.
I think that's very interesting. I like to hear that. I mean, I can only speak from my experience, and my sort of clients come here and they're actually, and we sort of discussed this, although they're incredibly wealthy, they are very low key, and I sort of, they buy a flat, and it's a bit like me buying a bungalow on the Norfolk Broads. It's for 2 months of the year or whatever, and they buy this very beautiful and rather lovely property, but for them it is just a holiday home. I mean, I think, I guess, what do we feel at the moment? There must be, and it depends on the demographic, what is motivating people to come to London? Henry very kindly talked about tax structuring, and a vast array of things people try to factor in about making, what is ostensibly for this market sector a multi-million pound investment. And what is motivating them to get in your demographics of, you're trying 17 out of 20 Chinese buyers, and that might be pretty obvious.
Yeah, I think there are also some pretty basic demographics that actually things like education is a very constant level. I think, if you talk about Chinese again, they're actually buying schools, but they, schools are hugely important. I think corporate relocation, despite what everyone's saying, companies are still coming into London, which is great. And obviously you've got currency trade, you've got old money, you've got it's in the blood, we're going to buy something in London, and where you have large, say, Middle Eastern families, they're still buying for younger members, they're still doing that. I think the reasons why people are coming in are still very much the same. I think London, as Alan said, is still perceived to be residentially a relatively safe place to be, and I think they like to operate commercially in an area, in a country where the legal system is trustworthy. So, I don't think the demographics, other than the currency trade, and also factoring in where they're coming from as well. So I think there is an element of uncertainty around the world, and they're just identifying safe place.
Yeah.
I think also in the knowledge that if people reporting property prices aren't going to go up necessarily for the next couple of years, the overriding thing is safety. Yeah.
I mean, I get London is what my clients say to me, and I think it's a global city, as you were saying, Alan, and it's people want to come here for such a range of reasons, and those probably range of reasons are as old as the hills, aren't they? I think. Yeah, there's nothing really new. It's just the faces change and where they're coming from to some degree, which is a wonderful thing for us who live here, isn't it? To live in such a city that's. I mean, I love London personally, but I mean, for me, it's the greatest city in the world. But so I might get emotional. You have to excuse me. But in terms, the demographic, the people coming, they're buying. Yeah, but what are they buying? We're talking about product now. Doer-upper or new build, and I guess who's the doer-upper, who's the new build? And I'm really heartened to hear that the Americans are coming in. That must be the dollar, is it?
Yeah, it's a dollar.
I like Americans. So I do a lot of business.
You probably some of the main headlines this year have been some of the very large US deals, and one person spent an awful lot of money. Where 50% are second homes, the type of property they're buying is that sort of lock up and leave, and the types of property they're buying for purely convenience are generally the turnkey stock. The problem we've got is that 3 years ago, developers were dissuaded from buying And of course, they didn't buy a lot of stock, and right now we're suffering from a lack of turnkey finished product. So you may have clients who are actually saying there's nothing to buy, there's no choice. The reality is that there are a number of new developments now sprouting up in London, and they're coming to fruition. So the trades you're hearing, 4 out of the top 6 deals in the last 6 months have been the very expensive penthouses in these key developments. So the Americans are coming in with a currency trade advantage, cherry picking the best unit in the scheme, and buying at favourable rates. So my perception is turnkey stock is what everybody wants. And it's an easy life. And if you've got lots of money, why get yourself involved in doing a house up? One of the luxuries is buying one that's ready and it's off the shelf.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly true of my experience with my clients and what they're looking for. And one of the things I always think is, obviously, there's a property cycle, isn't there? So you have to buy the site at a price as a developer. You then have to do all your planning and everything else. There's a long tail on all of this. And if the market moves against you, you know, you could end up in a situation where you're trying to sell stock at a price that isn't in sync with the market at this moment. And obviously large, scale developers ride it out, don't they? I mean, we were looking at a building the other day with 100 apartments in for a client, and to buy the building, and the developers had let it all out rather than sell it, and that was in a good central London location. Not obviously in Sloane Square, you'd know it, you'd see it towering above you. But, and it's just very it's sort of interesting what, I like this challenge because I think with what I know already, and a lot of my clients, I learn an awful lot from them. They come in and I think, why would they want that? And then you realise how it works for them. But in terms of your clients and your partners and people you're working with and your own development, Alan, I mean, what the turn, I know you a long time, so I know you do some great refurbishment work. You've done a lot of stuff in all the best postcodes in central London. What we were talking about this the other day, which was product, and whether you do the doer upper, or whether you're interested in the turnkey, £3,300 a square foot job. What's your sort of take on that?
Well, I look at things very simply, because if somebody's coming to a capital city like London, they already have a home, generally speaking, and if we're talking about high net worth people, so they don't actually need to buy or rent anywhere. So if they're going to be motivated to buy somewhere, it's very much an emotional purchase rather than a practical purchase. They have to, if they're paying a premium price, because we're talking about expensive properties here, they have to be hugely motivated. So people used to talk about location, but I think people are now starting to look more for product, especially on the turnkey aspect. The last project that we sold was actually on a scrappy part of Ladbroke Grove in Notting Hill, right? And I don't know if you know Notting Hill, it's on the corner of Elgin Crescent, and it was a new build house. And we sold it for $5.5 million, so it was a reasonable ticket size. The first person who we had it under offer with was somebody from Malta, who came from an agent called Aston Chase, who are based in sort of Marylebone, St John's Wood, right? Not in Notting Hill, because they were looking for a specific type of property. They couldn't, unfortunately, get the money sorted. We then had very serious interest from a Middle East buyer who came from Beecham Estates in Mayfair, right? They certainly weren't looking in Notting Hill, right? They were looking in one of the golden postcodes, but they couldn't find what they wanted, so they came to look at our little house in Notting Hill, and they were very keen to buy it. But in the meantime, we had a buyer come through the door from Aylesfords in Chelsea, right? Who also weren't looking in Notting Hill, and they came from Switzerland. And so the end buyers were two brothers who came through a Chelsea agency buying a house in Notting Hill. So you really don't know where the buyers are going to come from, and where they start looking, and Richard, I'm sure, can agree. Well, I hope good to see his opinion. You know, sometimes they'll start looking here for this type of product, but they'll end up over here with a completely different type of product, because you know what they think they want is in the end very different to actually what they end up getting. So the market for turnkey is I think very emotional, because they've got to really like it and want it. Yes, of course, you have the financial added value at the moment. We talking about the doer-uppers, we actually do a sourcing service exclusively for unmodernized properties, right? Whether it's for their own private use, or they want to buy a portfolio of rental investments where we'll source a single building, an old knackered building, whether it's an old office, hotel, or residential, and then refurbish it for them so they've got it all under one roof. And different, you know, investors, different end users, they all have particular types of taste. And some, I'm sure you've heard about some famous, well-known, very expensive apartment blocks in Knightsbridge, which have been recently built, without naming anything, where you know the number of people who bought a turnkey apartment to then rip it all out and put in their own style. And the company who built the block actually made a significant amount of money on doing all the refurbishment work and all the new design work for the things that they're selling. And I think one thing that we haven't really talked about is value for money, because I think that the high net worths who are buying now, they're very value orientated. They want value, you know, and some of them are sometimes going out of the traditional postcodes to get better value and look at opportunities. And in turn, they're less motivated to buy from a developer a turnkey product if they think they're going to have to actually rip it all out or part of it and flush money down the toilet. I think people are more careful, and especially if it's people who have made their own money. You know, the reason why they made their own money is they're pretty savvy and they don't want to flush money down the toilet.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd go as far as to say it used to be location, not just product, but it's actually now value. That's what people are saying. So I'd totally agree with that.
Oh, all right, an agent's agreement.
In terms of the journey, in terms of people deciding what they want, it's quite interesting when you look at an agency and you look at the demographics of what actually buyers do and what they get up to before they actually choose something. Average number of properties they'll probably see at the moment could be up to about 40. So you know, it's all part of a journey, and the average time that might take is now north of 6 months, edging towards a year. So you're in it for the journey. It's educating these people. They're indecisive, and the major curveball, and as advisors you probably agree with this, but the major curveball, the biggest competitor for us, is actually the rental market. So you might go all the way down the line, buyers speak to advisors, they look at the market and they say, do you know something, I'm going to rent. And on the back of that, high-end rental numbers are up 30% over the last year. And one thing wealth gives you the ability to have choice. And if you're of the mind property prices aren't going to go up for 2, 3, 4 years, why not rent, save stamp duty, and give yourself the ability to charter a house, and then decide where you want to be in 3 or 4 years' time. Now, that is a fact. That's what's going on in a number of areas. My argument is that the finest of the new build opportunities will sell and you'll miss out. So you must secure now and take the currency trade and get on with it. But just as a curveball in my world, the rental side,
Yeah.
great for Savills, but the rental side is a major topic of conversation right now.
Yeah. Well, I think as we've touched on value, I think we would value, sorry, horrible segue, your thoughts and opinions and input that you might have. My personal view is that I see it as a sort of ecosystem of the sort of families that we look after, the investments that they have here in London. I'm a London-based business dealing in London property. I don't have lots of other offices elsewhere. And I just see it as an ecosystem, and I have a lot of clients, 100% of my business is referral, and they come to me with quite a number of sob stories. And it makes me quite sad that there are these very valuable clients who are not necessarily that enamoured with some of the goings on that they've had to put up with. And I just want to throw open, first of all, any questions you want to ask, but also that comment that how do we preserve and protect the clients that really essentially pay for our our life and our things. I mean, certainly, that thing. Sorry.
I'd like to pick up on your comments on value and ask how do buyers actually perceive value and how do they establish it longer term? It's very easy to see a wonderful product which in one location is one price and in another is substantially less. But buying that might not in medium or even long term be a good value acquisition. How can clients actually establish what true value in the widest of senses is?
It's a very, very good question. I must say that there is much more transparency nowadays with prices, so there's no hiding, and information is more readily available. So actually in our world, that is a massive game changer over the last 10 years. You can see records, you can see what's sold, you can compare prices. And I think also we're just at the present moment in time, not at the point where it's easy to further break a record that sold 3 years ago. So the brakes are on slightly on just going up and up and up on pricing. So they are very swift to compare that penthouse with a penthouse that sold 2 years ago. Why has it gone up by £3,000 a square foot? I say value. These guys will immediately knock you on your asking price out of principle anyway. So it's also a slightly different market, and one, it's important people are aware what is trading and how much is trading, because as far as they're concerned, they come into London thinking they're the only buyer in town, and it's their form of negotiation, whether they're from Hong Kong or the States, is actually to hit you on price before you've even started.
I think also, Stuart, one of the interesting things that Richard talked about was people looking at 40 different properties.
Yeah.
So their knowledge is, that's got to be pretty good of values, because, that's a hell of a lot of property to look at. And obviously some of them have advisors as well. But, the stats are out there, and often they may go into other agents and say, look, I've been looking at this property, what do you think, what else do you have? And they'll build up their own picture. If they want to get finance on it, of course, then there's a valuation, depending on what type of finance they want, which again gives them greater value and greater comfort.
I mean, we advise clients only on the buy side. We're not in a sell side situation, and very often we're engaged with them for long periods of time. We hope to have long-term relationships with them. It's not a simply transactional situation. So, really it is about a lot of research and identifying what they want, and then when you find that property that they're actually interested in, rather than, we don't analyse every property that they happen to drive past on the way to our office. If we find that one, that's when you put in an awful lot of work. Finding the property is only a small fraction of the thing. And we collaborate with our clients because there is so much information out there that, you know, we work with them as a team and go through what they find themselves, what they want, what we give them the information about who's next door and what's happening here, and, you know, because for some cultures it's important who's around, what the neighbourhood is, and all this sort of thing. So yeah, it is really about just running as many numbers as you can, using the resources you have, having a pulse on the market, talking to. We collaborate with Savills on a large number of properties in both our rental portfolios and if we dispose of that or we're acquiring. And you talk to your friends and you get, as you would with a colleague in law, you get a professional courtesy that might not be afforded you know, to the man on the street. And so a lot of research goes into it. And you know, I mean, sometimes, you know, I look at things and I can't see value in it. And I have to sort of stop myself from that emotional response and go, right, you're not buying it, Robert, these are buying it, and these are the factors that drive them. And you mentioned emotional factors. So yeah, a lot of research and to be prepared to say, you know, it's too much, and hard negotiations with tough people like Richard, which, you know, grind me down on a daily basis. Any other questions from you bright-eyed lot? Who is finding themselves that their family office clients are powering into London because of the dollar? Any? Well, gentleman at the back.
Yeah, my name is Shari. I run the private office for Alan and Lam.
Right.
Actually.
Make it a good question then.
Well, no, I'm just interested to see Panel's opinion. The clients that I'm dealing with, I always welcome a client who is informed, okay, and educated about what it is they want, right? The clearer the brief, the clearer the concept of where they want to live, what they want to do is always welcome for me. It's a lot harder to hold someone's hand when, you know, we have to analyze 20 things for them or look at different concepts or ideas and help them figure out exactly what it is they want to do. So I believe that it's better for anyone working in this industry and of course in any other industry, that the more informed the other party is, the better it is for us. So, you know, I'm curious to see, you know, what the panel thinks can be done overall for the industry, you know, to help educate buyers more, okay?
But about what aspect?
About the aspect of what it is they want to do or what it is they want to know. So, for example, you know, we've talked about that, you know, the statistics are available, for example. So they can research things, they can understand, and they can learn. But, you know, from an agency point of view, Richard, like the figure of 40 properties for me is shocking, to be honest, right? And I want to see, in your opinion, is there something more the agent can do to, you know, educate and inform people more? Because that's what we are trying to do.
Absolutely. I mean, there is born a buying agent then, isn't it? Because basically there is a very large part of our market that is now advisory, and the sort of birth of the buying agent, of which we probably have maybe 120 on our books who would claim they have clients looking in London, and they are that sort of seam of filter that are paid to acquire and to advise. And I permanently negotiating against them. I act for sellers and I was acting for buyers. So I think there is a that your point has opened up to actually create a new side of agency, and that's the buying agent. As a company like Savills, we spend millions on research because research, I think, provides the trust that you know what you're talking about, and I think that certainly gives us an edge, and some of our competitors do exactly the same. But I think research is ultimately what the ultra high net worth market wants, and we're not just dealing with buying agents, by the way. We're dealing with private offices who are maybe behind the buying agent. We're dealing with, you know, various wealth advisors. We're dealing with the banks. You know, there are more and more layers in a deal now than there ever have been, and there are opportunities throughout all those layers to touch on research, and research will educate, I think. I mean, 40 properties is a lot, but it was far less, you know, pre the end of 2014. You know, there's just a slight lack of urgency. You know, it was down to probably 8 to 10 at one point. You know, you get in a cab and you view something, you probably buy it. But fundamentally, I just think this is a time that will move on, and set of circumstances give slightly different answers, and you know, people are viewing more things. But we do rely on buying agents and feeding them the information. That's actually what we're quite good at.
But do you think it's I mean, you know, I bought properties myself. You know, we were talking about an example in Knightsbridge where I bought a property for £170,000 in cash. That property now is worth, say, £3.5 million. I mean, I wouldn't. The cash I had in my bank that was £170,000, I parted with, as a much younger man, without much trouble. But I think if I were buying that flat today, I certainly would be more considered in my decision making. So the values are high. You know, these are almost like buying family business type numbers, aren't they? They're not sort of, you know, they're not the sort of 200, 300, £1 million that they used to be. They're big, you know, it's £10 million, £15 million, £7 million, £5.5 million.
They are big, but there's still that emotion that goes into it.
Yeah.
You can't take away the emotion. I mean, you know, there is still truth in the emotional purchase. You're viewing 40 things, and there's something about that one you want to buy.
For sure.
I'm putting myself, I'm thinking of the question, putting it in my own head, right? Because to me, the answer is how much market knowledge do they have, right? Mm-hmm. Because if they don't know London at all, it's pretty difficult. But if they know London, it's a lot of a narrower segment. And if I just give my own example, I'm been looking to buy somewhere for myself, right? And I have my own property in St John's Wood, put it on the market for initially 925, which was probably overpriced. Then we put it to 875, and I now have it under offer at 830, right? So from a realistic price of 875, I've taken a little bit of a hit down to 830. I've looked, for me to buy somewhere, I've looked at two properties, right? The first one I agreed to buy, but the transaction fell foul because of the way the intermediaries were acting, the lawyers, and we couldn't get to grips with the answers that we wanted in the timely fashion that we wanted, and then the vendors increased the price. The second property, and that was in Lowndes Square in Knightsbridge. It was a repossession, and it was a messy deal. The second property I looked at, I've exchanged upon, which is a 1,700 square foot second floor lateral on Eaton Square. And there I'm buying it direct from the Grosvenor estate. It's clean, it's been simple, yes, via an agent, of course, but it's been a straightforward transaction. So the first one I would have bought if we could have sorted it, the second one I'm buying. So that goes completely inverse to Richard's clients averaging, or some of them 40 properties. But there, I knew what I wanted, right? I was focused, you know, I could get sent a floor plan and a couple of photos and be able to obviously decide very quickly whether I wanted to go and view it. Because as I say, I haven't viewed loads of other properties. And the one that I'm buying is on the market for 1.5, and we agreed at 1.15. So I've got a greater discount on the higher value property, having given away a smaller discount on the one that I'm selling. And that's the arbitrage, and the thing that I think one of the reasons why clients go to people like Robert and Richard for advice and to find the right properties, because they want to get value, you know, as well as the right location, the right type of property.
Any other question? Oh.
It's a comment really and a question. So Alan, it's probably not a fair comparison. Your story is a good story, but it's not a fair comparison because clearly you are an expert in the field, and you got access to information.
I'm not trying to
and
defend.
knowledge. Okay, so, but I have a question which actually I'll open to the whole panel. That is, how does your world differ from the world that we see on the television, $1 million listing? I mean, you know, it's good TV. I watch it with interest. I don't know if anyone else does. Well, how does your world differ? Because, you know...
This suit's about 10 years old. I think they're constantly shopping, aren't they? So we're much more, we're a bit lower key, and my world is very different because a lot of what I do is not commission driven. So it is on a fee base. I could do, yes, if I fancy it, yes, there's no problem at all. Talk to me afterwards, I'll see if I can help you with something. No, but I think, so we have a very different strategy and approach to advising our clients, and that's why, you know, we work on 100% referrals, so that's why our clients come from the people that they come from to us, and therefore my life is completely not like $1 million listing, and, you know, in any way, that's, you know, in terms of the conversation we're having today, $1 million wouldn't get you very far, I don't think. But you're more like $1 million listing,
No, I'm not.
Which one are you?
No, I don't know. I mean, let's face it, we see all sorts, quite frankly, and you know, I guess half the interesting part of the job, I suppose. But I you know, I throw this point out that I just wonder whether it is as socially acceptable to be buying the most expensive house in London. And whether there is a slight sort of people are slightly more reserved about a large property when they buy it. You know, in the old days, say 10, 15 years ago, you would show off what you bought. Nowadays, you talk about what you don't have. So you don't go on about the fact you bought the biggest house in the estate, you haven't bought the biggest house in Kensington Palace Gardens. You know, it's a much more low-key purchase. We may have touched on this earlier, but in terms of $1 million, it's very shiny and very in your face. I think one of the joys of London is that you can walk straight past these guys in the street, and residential property is much more of a low-key asset, and I think that's another reason why people like London. So yeah, we do see a bit of both, on a regular basis, but. To be fair, the way you sell it is normally on a constant, and actually most buyers are more low-key.
See, if I put my developer head on, I would beg to differ with the panel, because the $1 million listing, the feature of that is what I talked about before. It's 100% the emotional purchase. When they walk through the door, is there the wow? If there is, they may engage. If there's no wow, there's zero engagement. My job is to create that wow, because I don't know before the person walks through the door whether they're visual, auditory, kinesthetic, about taste or about smell. I don't know the types of characters. So I have to create a product that attracts all these different things. So I will get my builder to power wash the pavements outside, to clean the street signs. So that sense of arrival is, in my view, as much of a red carpet for them as I could provide. I will spend, you know, £1,000 on powered compressor door closers, so when they open the gate, it has that nice feeling. I'll put a nice knob on the gate. I'll spend money on getting a logo done for the number of the property, right? So all these things which one would not necessarily need to do, but in a $1 million listing type of property, is this thing that these people subconsciously think of, but and maybe not conscious, because people, you know, you've got your conscious, your subconscious, and your super subconscious. So if you want to attract these buyers, you have to attract different things in different ways. And, you know, I've sold to, you know, Sienna Miller, the actress. I've met with Nicole Kidman. She wanted to buy one of my properties until, fortunately she got pregnant. She changed her mind. But they're all looking for different different things. BBC did a TV program, we had 2.5 million viewers, called Millionaire Basement Wars. I was the developer they used upon that, right? And just putting your mind in that of these types of lavish, luxury type buyers, it's again horses for courses. You've got 10 different buyers, and out of those 10, maybe one is super value. They don't want to be in the prime area. They've got the same budget. Another wants a doer-upper. Another wants a safe place, 500 meters from Scott's on Mount Street. Somebody else wants a penthouse. Different people want different things, and it's our role to cater for the diverse types of people, and it's the role of people like Richard and Robert to satisfy their needs on what they want to buy. Does that give a fair flavour?
Anybody else before we close?
Sorry, I'll go first very quickly. So I work at Standard Chartered Bank at James Station. One of the challenges we face, I'm sure many in the room can appreciate this, is due diligence, knowing your client, understanding where they got their wealth from, especially with doing increased scrutiny, unexplained wealth orders and whatnot. So usually I find we get to a point, okay, we're going to have that conversation, where did the wealth come? Be interested to hear from the panel if you're having to get involved in that conversation with clients coming into the UK who may not understand why things need to be documented.
I'm a boring corporate, so I can answer that. And it's all about risk. But fundamentally, yeah, it's a major part in our life right now. And we've actually just geared up to another level as well. I'm sure lawyers will know that there's sort of a super prime, a few extra questions being asked on top of our original AML. So our diligence and AML is now obviously on the sellers, but on the buyers, as you say, as well. And yeah, and I think some people feel as if they're being found guilty before, they've been able to prove themselves innocent. And yeah, I think it is a problem, but I'm afraid I'm quite black and white about it. It's not going to change. It's probably going to get worse, and we just got to live with it. And actually, I think the earlier we can confront it as a profession with our sellers and buyers, the easier it becomes. It's the trying to delay and all the rest of it, but it's going to get worse. And in answer to your question, has it been a problem with some people? It's been a problem definitely in some shape or form when deals not happening. I mean, fundamentally, we need to ask the question, where does the money come from? That's what it stems back to. And ironically, you probably find some of the English buyers are slightly more dismissive and unhelpful than others, because they're just not used to it. But yeah, it almost goes back to my point actually about this sort of slightly social issue of buying big, because again, people fear the alarm bells will ring when they start spending 40, 50 million pounds, 100 million. We're out with something at 200 million this week. When these deals happen, the alarm bells ring, and I'm sure they're absolutely fine with all aspects, but people just don't want the hassle.
I think if people have nothing to hide, why should it be an issue? Obviously the lawyers, you do all the KYC. That's in essence the acid test. That can be done in a discreet manner between the client and the lawyer, and it's if they're a reputable legal practice, then that I would have thought should be a sufficient rubber stamp, because the KYC is they've got to answer quite a few questions on that.
In terms of, for our business, I can only speak for myself, because 100% of our business is referral. We're referred from private banks, from law firms in the main. The clients are usually very commercially adept people with a great breadth of business interests, and therefore that doesn't pose us a problem. And we know we have to have it, but when we instruct, for example, Savills, who we're blessed to work with, obviously they have probably the best paperwork, actually. I've got to say this now, They have great paperwork, and I sound like Donald Trump. And but they have great paperwork, and it's a pleasure to work with professional people because it makes your life easy. You as a banker, it's a hassle, isn't it? You want to write the business, you've gone a long way down the line, and then there's this righteous indignation that causes, why is this deal going away? And all you're asking for is what's right and proper. We don't really, I think, in the nature of our clients and where they're from and the long-term relationships they have with the people who've referred them to us, this is very much a matter of we just ask. Sometimes we don't ask, we work with the lawyer, or we just work it through. So for us, it hasn't been a big problem, but I can see if somebody comes from the street through a referral that's an introducer to you, then they're a valid client, but they're reluctant to answer those questions because they're not experienced in answering them.
I just let you know what we get up to as well. Is that I think people see the agency side as the window for various activities that obviously haven't happened in the past. But we do have HMRC walking off the pavement and actually inspect our files, and they do sweeps every 6 months, maybe a year. They have closed some people down temporarily until they get their files in order, and they are being extremely thorough. So it's a big thing.
One of the tricks of the trade that we do in advising a client, and I've done this with friends and I've done it myself, is actually flip that whole thing on reverse. Because what the agent wants is an offer which they're comfortable with, that they can perform, right? Forget about the price, obviously that's a negotiating, but they want, if they're going to offer, how solid is that offer? So what we actually advise our clients to do is, before they go out hunting, or whether we go out hunting for them, we actually go through the KYC first. If they have a lawyer, they get that all established. Then, if they haven't got a lawyer, we'll introduce them to a lawyer. Then, if they find somewhere that they want to buy, and let's say for argument's sake it's 10 million, just to keep the numbers easy, we will encourage them to place £1 million, 10%, in their lawyer's escrow account. Now, imagine from the agent's point of view, they get an offer letter, not from the buyer or from the buyer's agent or etc., but from an established lawyer saying, we are in funds for 10% deposit for this property. We are instructed to perform. We can exchange in such in time. Our client has gone through already the KYC process, and completion can be in such and such a time. Why make life complicated? A little bit of organization, a little bit of proactiveness, it makes life easy for all of us.
You make it sound very easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is easy.
How many offers do you get like that? I'm sure very few.
Well, no, I mean, I just followed up. We've got to do our own due diligence on that bar ourselves, ideally as well. So, these aren't challenges. They're just sort of situations, aren't they? Really, but yeah, it's a big thing. It's going to get bigger. So.